UFC 219 takes place Center Strip, Las Vegas on Saturday night at the house Bill Foley built. Man, them Golden Knights, they pack the arena every time, and what a home arena advantage. But we're talking about some fights of a different style on Saturday, that of course being UFC 219, and the fight at the top of the card, Matt, we're going to talk about both co-main events, but the fight at the top of the card, of course, Holm Cyborg. And I'll tell you what, Holly Holm taking on Cris Cyborg. We know Cyborg's 18-1, hasn't lost since her original fight, her initial fight 12 years ago. And she is a 365 favorite, and the total's 1.5 rounds with juice flying through the roof on the over. But the biggest thing a lot of people talk about when they're talking about a Cyborg fight is her physical advantage that she has over the other person, the opponent. Holly Holm may not be as big or as far as being as thick as Cyborg, but she's just as tall, and she's got a small reach advantage.
Yeah, and you know, this is a really interesting matchup here, and unfortunately for this card, it's not our usual New Year's Eve, end of the year card due to suspensions, scheduling conflicts, and you know, and just difficulty making big fights in the UFC right now. And I feel like Holly Holm got thrust into this spot a little bit because she's a big name. The problem with Holly Holm is she's 1-3 in her last 4 fights in the UFC, and part of that problem is Holly Holm needs a really aggressive fighter to come after her to be at her best, because at her best she's a counter puncher, counter striker of devastating, you know, precision with that.
See Ronda Rousey.
Yeah, see Ronda Rousey fight if you need a perfect example. The problem is against Valentina Shevchenko, she had problems where Shevchenko wasn't so aggressive. She stayed on the outside and threw kicks as well. You know, she got choked out in the 5th round against Miesha Tate, but that was a fight she was dominating as well against another aggressive opponent. Cyborg is kind of that aggressive opponent who could walk into some strikes here. I really like the over 1.5 rounds. Normally I like to open these myself. This fight, because it opened so far in advance, the market opened at 1.5 rounds. I would have opened at 2.5 rounds. There's no history here of either of these fighters of why this fight shouldn't go this long. Cyborg has 16 knockouts, but 3-0 in the UFC with 3 knockouts, but in her last 2 fights, a 2nd-round knockout and a 3rd-round knockout over Tanya Evinger, who isn't even in the same class as Holly Holm. Holly Holm hasn't lost by knockout. She's never been knocked out. And her only inside the distance loss ever was a 5th-round submission loss to Miesha Tate in that title fight. So Holly Holm, who's also going to be able to handle the striking better of Cyborg than any other fighter Cyborg's ever fought. Holly Holm, a former world champion professional boxer, will be able to handle that distance, that aggressiveness, that striking power of Cyborg better than most. And I don't know who wins this fight, because Holly Holm has a tendency not to win these big fights other than the Ronda Rousey fight. But I do really like the over 1.5 rounds. If I was going to lay the juice on this fight, if you said you have to bet Cyborg or you have to bet the over 1.5 rounds, I'm betting that they make it halfway through round 2. You
know, and that's a good point. I think, to me, I can't lay 365 in this spot, because most of Cyborg's opponents, you know, they're decent strikers. They can't move. They've got slow footwork. Holly Holm is the opposite of that. I mean, she's a striker. She's a counterpuncher, as you mentioned, but she's got great footwork. She's very fast on her feet. Good defense, which I think also helps push that over and goes into the 2nd round. That's an interesting note that you made, that if you did open the total in this fight, it would have been, you know, into the 2nd round. It would have been 2.5, into the 3rd round, actually, at 2.5. But no intimidation here. One would think after what Holm did to then undefeated Ronda Rousey, that it's a situation where she's just not freaked out by Cyborg at all in this particular fight. And as you mentioned, her boxing past makes her know that she can beat anybody. So anyway, I would lean towards Holly Holm. I don't know if I want to jump in, but I'm just saying right now there's no way I'd lay that big price with Cris Cyborg. I'll take your advice and play the over. Co-main event is the lightweight battle between Khabib Nurmagomedov and Edson Barboza. And Nurmagomedov opened and remains 260, over under 2.5 rounds juice over on that one, Matt. Barboza known for his massive kicks, but he started to develop a decent boxing game.
This is a fight where I couldn't wait to see the weight, because we've seen Khabib Nurmagomedov have issues with weight before, including getting hospitalized in his last fight. He was supposed to go with Tony Ferguson. In fact, he's only fought twice since April 2014. That's 3.5 years with only 2 fights under his belt, one of them against an unranked, unheralded Daryl Horcher. So what do we really know about Khabib the last 3 years, except he had trouble making weight? Tuesday of fight week this week, he was 1 pound under already with his new dietitian. Now, he looks a lot smaller, Khabib. He doesn't have those big muscles. He doesn't have that hulking frame. But the fact that he was on weight on Tuesday already is a real positive sign that at least this fight's going to go. He's not going to have any fatigue issues. And this is the classic grappler versus striker matchup. Khabib's been hit before. We saw Michael Johnson hit him with a massive left hand. Khabib was able to, withstand it, get Michael Johnson to the ground, and eventually submit him there. When Khabib gets you to the ground, nobody's gotten back up.
Sure.
But Edson Barboza might be the most devastating striker that Khabib has faced so far. The interesting thing is, to your point, and I think this is what's going to make the fight, a lot of guys that are great at throwing kicks don't like to throw kicks against Khabib because it makes you vulnerable for the takedown.
Sure.
Edson Barboza has to throw his kicks in this fight if he's going to win. Leg kicks, body kicks, and head kicks, all three Khabib's susceptible to, but you can't be scared to throw them, that you're going to get taken down. I think there's a chance Edson Barboza wins this fight. The only reason I'm not playing Edson Barboza was the simple fact that Khabib Nurmagomedov is actually on weight for a change. And that, we've seen this guy on weight is a devastating, scary guy. This is a guy who already beat Rafael dos Anjos. He's beat some legit guys. It's just been so long since we've seen him against the best guys. It's hard to tell.
I hope Barboza isn't afraid to throw those kicks because they hit like trees.
Oh, man.
It's incredible. And the thing about Khabib is
you ever want to see one of the greatest KO kicks in the history of the UFC, go back and watch Edson Barboza's spin kick knockout of Terry Etienne. Just unbelievable. Yeah. Literally gets hit and does the slow fall.
I think my teeth got knocked out just watching it. But the thing about Khabib is he can't leave himself open due to his aggressive nature. So if Barboza, who's improved his boxing skills a little bit, can be patient and wait for that, he's got a chance at this one. Give us a fight that, I know you're not huge on this card, but give us a fight that's interesting you from a bankroll perspective.
I like two other underdogs on the main card. Obviously, the Jimmy Rivera versus John Lineker fight got canceled. Unfortunately, that was going to be a great scrap. So the other two cards, the other two fights that were left on the main card, Carlos Condit versus Neil Magny. Carlos Condit has a big name. He's been in all these big fights. For some reason, he continues to get monstrous fights, 2 and 5 in his last 7 fights. That's a guy you don't want to back as a favorite. Retired twice already. I'm not sure how motivated Carlos Condit is. Neil Magny on a losing streak lately. He went on that big run. Everybody jumped on him. He's lost as a favorite. Now he's coming back in the underdog role. I like Neil Magny a lot better in the underdog role than I do as a favorite. No problem taking a shot on Neil Magny, plus 150. And former inaugural UFC women's strawweight champion Carla Esparza, plus 220 versus Cynthia Calvillo. Cynthia Calvillo is a 6-0 fighter. Level of competition's been fairly weak so far, but everyone likes her because she trains at Team Alpha Male and she's undefeated. But Carla Esparza owns a win over current UFC strawweight champion Rose Thug Namajunas, amongst others, and she's been in there with the best of the best. Joanna Jędrzejczyk, Rose Namajunas, Marion Monroe, coming off a really impressive win over Marina Moroz. Plus 220, I like Carla Esparza. Use her athleticism and get it done over an overmatched opponent.
I like your Holm Cyborg over the best.
Yeah.
But Esparza's tough as nails, man.
She
I'm
sure
telling
is.
you what, she can take it. All right, good stuff from Matt Holt. He is VP at CG Business Development at CG Technology, and you can follow him on Twitter at Matthew Holt VP. Great information all week long from a betting handle, behind the counter. Plus, Matt will give a pick or two on the games that are being played that day, including in the UFC. Hey, don't forget, again, you can get Mondays for just $9 at WagerTalk.com. Any daily package on Monday for $9. And if you like these videos, again, all you got to do is click the thumbs up button and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Hey, the other guys, the other panel, they're coming up with plenty of football to talk about. Stick around for that. For Matt, I'm Scott. We'll talk to you again next week. Put them in the win column.